All right, everyone. This is the show we call Bring It In from True Hoop. It's a good Friday. David Thorpe, how are you, sir?
I am doing well, I'm happy to say.
We have an honored guest today. Do you know who it is?
Oh, is it your dog or your daughter or your son?
No, it's Jarod.
Ah, I knew that.
Yeah.
I thought you
Yeah,
were going to surprise me with something.
he's here every day. I don't think he's missed a single show, except for this exact moment, which is the time that he's our featured guest.
Yeah, it's time
He's having a little tech issue. So you think you and I can kill talking for a minute while we're waiting for Jarod to dial back in?
I suspect so.
No. Oh, there he is.
No Bluetooth today. We're going old school. I don't know what's going on with the Bluetooth.
It's going to be fine. It's going to be just fine. Maybe it'll be better. Maybe you'll like it.
Jarod, who's cutting your hair?
Myself.
Yeah.
Allow myself to introduce myself. Yeah.
Jarod Hector, thank you for joining us today, sir, and every day.
Thank you for having me, as always.
So we did some actual preparation because we're a very professional outfit. And what we're going to do to kick things off is an experiment we're calling 9 by 90. So we're going to go 9 sections of 90 seconds. There's Judy with the clock. And we have topics prepared, and we're just going to riff. And then we'll see what happens. You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay, Jarod, you're first up. Whenever you're ready, sir. You can take some cuts in the batter's box if you want.
Get myself ready.
Yeah. Once it's on, it's on. There's no stopping once we get going. Oh, Devin's already beating me to it, by the way. Everyone has questions for us, please. Click the chat. This is technically still the introduction of the show. I'm on time.
All right, Judy, start the clock.
Okay.
So we've all been watching The Last Dance and the Bulls and Michael Jordan as this main protagonist. And I was thinking about him as an anti-hero, right? Because there's sort of this archetype out there of Jordan as this ultra competitor, and he's the hero of the story. And I was looking at it as to when anti-hero became sort of in vogue for us to use. And from my recollection, it's from peak TV, right? Tony Soprano was like the first guy. He's a sociopath and a psychopath, but we love him anyway because he's on his couch with Dr. Melfi and he can be childlike. When you watch that documentary, you see the petulance of Jordan, right? Like the constant needling of Jerry Krause, the piling on his teammates, right? All the things we laud and say that this is the sort of thing that we look to see in our heroes. It's like, are we sure that's what we want them to do? It's a weird dynamic. And I think it's sort of how the only way we know how to look at that type of player, right? Which is why Kobe identified so many people so us, because he and Jordan are cut from that same cloth. But I'm wondering, right? Like, is that truly the way what we want to see, right? Like, they're real because we're seeing they're good and they're bad, and there is no inherent all good or all bad. They're very complex, complicated guys, and I thought that this documentary did an excellent job of portraying Michael Jordan as the anti-hero, and I yield my time.
I accept your time. Add it on, Judy. 8 more seconds. Just kidding.
Really?
No.
He already used them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I was not the biggest Scottie Pippen fan when he played in Chicago. Not that I didn't think he was great. I did, but I wasn't convinced he could really be the top player on a great team. I was probably wrong. And I didn't love the Bulls, period. But I'm certain of this. With the way the game is played now, you think about who more or less are the best players in the game and what he did then with the rules we have today, I think he'd be a leading MVP candidate. You think about the Paul Georges, the Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, though, these incredibly versatile, skilled, size guys, and he's every bit the athlete they are. I would rank him probably just below LeBron, but above Paul George in the pure athleticism category. And if he was growing up in this day and age, he would have even a better skill set. And he was a guard growing up. That really helped him. He would be asked to do a lot more pick and rolls. And then what we do defensively now, in those days, you had to kind of stand next to your guy until the ball crossed the free throw line or someone had the ball in their hands, like on a post feed, and then he could react. And they used to hide him at free safety then, meaning he could guard someone that was bad. In today's game, you can't really do that, but he's fast enough to be able to impact games on both ends. Like top 5 offensive player, top 5, top 3 defensive player. That's an MVP candidate.
You got all this extra time. Okay. Next up, thank you for doing the clock, JD. Okay. David Thorpe asked me, what NBA or WNBA player, past or present, would make a good replacement for Adam Silver in 10 years? Great question. It really got me thinking. My first thought was there are different ways to lead. A lot of basketball leadership is like, I'm going to star, I'm going to win, I'm going to crush you. Michael Jordan might come to mind. He's not been a good team leader, right? I feel like team leadership is more about like, you guys, what can I do to make you guys better? So I'm looking for one of those kind of leaders. And the first thing that occurred to me, only because it's recent, was Chris Paul had wine and beer sent to the Utah Jazz locker room while they were getting there, waiting for their coronavirus test. I'm like, that is the greatest. That's my favorite piece of leadership in the NBA in a long time. Like, so Chris Paul's on the list for that reason. Then I was freaking out. There must be better answers. I called Jackie McMullen just now, and she was was calling the Oracle. Sue Bird, great suggestion. I love listening to Sue Bird talk. Steve Kerr, Doc Rivers, or Sharif Abdur-Rahim, who is the current G League commissioner, and by all accounts, a very thoughtful man. David might have a story to tell about him later. I yield my time.
All right, Jarod.
What am I talking about now? Oh, I'm talking about the first thing I want to change about the NBA. All right, go. So,
he's a self-starter. That's Jarod's a self-starter.
Talk about all the time. This is an opportunity for the NBA to change and do things differently. What I want to see is the digital product change. David, you know, we had a fun time doing our live watch earlier this week, but the NBA League Pass product is not good. And I don't understand, for a league that is so digital, or at least they think they are, and they're so up with the times. We're the modern cool league. They are horrendous at all things digital. So the first thing I'd want to do is fix NBA League Pass and all digital properties. I don't know if you guys remember, but the Nike Connected jersey, when they came out, I guess 2 years ago now, the idea was, oh, you could potentially see things on the screen where it's like fatigue level and what coaches are thinking about. These are the things that young people and people who are technologically savvy want to see on their screens. Things, I mean, David and us, we love basketball, but these other people, they want other things to see on their screens. And if we can give them that, first of all, a product, one, that can stream well, that you can get rewinds, and you can get all the classic games without any skips or any kind of, buffering issues, that's our first thing. But second thing, take all that knowledge you built up from Twitter and all your partners and push that out and see what we can do with all of this. Man, I'm good. Yield my time.
You had like a little warm-up pep talk and a little closing one.
All right, go ahead, Steve. Thank you. So this may be stealing Henry's idea, but I'm gonna do it anyway for a different reason.
No, I got a different one. We're good to go. Don't worry.
I'm writing about this week. Later today, we'll publish a story about how the Raptors came back to beat the Mavericks using a full court press in the fourth quarter, a diamond press. And the reason why they don't do it, which I discussed a little bit in the piece, is because it's just too fatiguing and no one wants to wear out their superstars. So if we played less games, and we've had many arguments as to why we would do that. Henry's led the charge on that for 8, 9, 10 years. We would also be able to play all these incredibly athletic guys more in a 94-foot game instead of 1/3 on one court, 1/3 on the other side of the court, and the entire middle, which is the whole game in soccer and hockey. It's no one cares about the middle, but the middle is brilliant if you press teams and make that valuable, because that's where the next pass often has to go. So I think my teams, when I coach AAU in high school, we press all the time, everywhere, nonstop, multiple different ways to press. We might attack you before half court on one, after half court another. We'll double team sometime on the catch, other times on the dribble. There's no shortage of strategies, which also adds so much more to the game, because there's so many things as a fan, you don't know what's going to come next, or as a player, you don't. So I would love 60 games to 70 games where teams could press, and we'd see the world's best athletes playing a sport, playing as fast as possible, more fun to watch.
I like it when the clock gets big. It's super scary. John, are you drinking a beer? What happened there? Was that a water bottle?
Oh, this is water. No beer at this hour of the day. No.
Okay. The first thing I would change about the NBA is I'd make the court bigger. I never got this before. People talked about it, and I was like, it seems weird. Like, all the action's around the rim anyway, and that's true. But I do think that it's getting bigger. The game, the play. Like, if you look at the imprint of where the players move on the court, thanks to Steph and Damian and others, it is expanding. If you can expand it out to the side too, it's just going to get more beautiful. Everything Mike D'Antoni did to improve the game was about creating more space. Let's just create more space. I don't ever want to see again a player start their drive and have the ref whistle that they just made that little reverse step and put their foot out of bounds. Like terrible. To give the dude an extra yard there, right? So that he can play basketball. Yeah, that's what I would do. Make it bigger. We're just going to get more of what's going to sell the league in the future are these beautiful, like David, your point about don't hit Picasso in the face while he's painting, right? Like these beautiful moments on a cell phone in China is the future of the business. Like, let's just have way more of them. No one's going to hate that. And it doesn't cost a penny. We talked about this before because you remove the back row of the arena and you add more courtside seats. Like it's ticket wise revenue positive, I believe. Okay. I yield my time.
I like it.
All right.
Sorry.
Oh, this should be simple.
I know. Thanks.
90 seconds.
Okay, so we are going a little bit askew here, and I want to talk about the erosion of democracy in America.
Perfect.
And I'm going to use sort of Wisconsin as sort of my incubator for this. You know, they had a recent election amid this coronavirus pandemic, and it caused a lot of problems. And what stuck out to me immediately was how it went from 180 polling stations to 5. 180 to 5. Like just not 180 to 70 or 65.
Right.
So now imagine all the residents now trying to cram into where they want to go, worrying about their health, right? Worrying about all these other various things, trying to get online in time because it closes at a certain time to get their vote in so that their basic fundamental right as an American citizen can be exercised. They can't even do that. You think about Wisconsin, okay, why does that matter? Wisconsin is a swing state, people. Yes, it has voted red a lot, but it's a swing state. And when you start having these types of things happen where polling stations get closed, guess what? Sometimes they don't open up again, right? When they start doing these things in the Supreme Court where they cut down on the extension deadlines for absentee ballots, that impacts other people, right? Typically poor, Black, and brown people, right? Who tend to not vote a certain way. We're living in a time where we have an administration that is doing everything it can while we're dealing with staying alive to literally take away our fundamental human rights. And that's a problem.
You
Jarod,
did
do
it.
you have 90 more seconds on this subject? Do you?
I do.
I will yield my time to you, my friend.
Oh!
More important than what I'm going to talk about.
Coach Thorpe, thank you so much, sir. You know, I and thank you for that. We are in a situation right now where, as a collective citizenry, we, the body politic, we need to be very mindful of what the ruling class is doing to us. And I know we all know, but what are we all doing, right? Action-wise. Yes, we see the person in the White House say things, and it's sort of a, hey, look at this, ha, it's funny. Guys, it's not funny. Like, it's very dangerous. When this all ends, we could have measures in place that literally stop us from doing the things that we want to do. And I'm not talking about what the crazies on the right are doing in terms of standing in front of hospitals and not letting hospital ambulances in and demanding that they want to go out with guns and go to restaurants because they're right. No. I'm talking about the kind of IDs you have to carry to get around now. I'm talking about who can travel and who can't travel, right? These little things that get put in because we're not paying attention. The Supreme Court, the conservative justices that are put into certain slots, that when these things get passed, you think of it as an abstract concept. But then when you go to try to do something, wait, what do you mean I can't? Oh, well, here we are now, folks. This is a very classic case of come see the bearded lady or the three-legged man. Meanwhile, while we're all doing that, our house is getting robbed. And when we get back, we got nothing. I yield the rest of my time.
Wait, do you want 90 more seconons?
No, I mean, I can go all around, but I'm good on that.
We need your thing, Henry. It sounds really good.
It's not the most basketball-centric thing ever, but I like a lot of these books on my shelf that you can't see from where I'm waving my hand are about management and leading teams, this kind of stuff. And most of the research from the last 20 years is about making people feel safe, right? You want to hold meetings, you want to bring in your new hires, you want to touch them in a way that makes them feel like they can present their best ideas. Because to win today, you need everybody's best idea. So if you're all Lee Iacocca top down, people just shut up and won't share what they think is going to work, right? So making people feel safe means everything that you could think. On top of that's the base layer, right? And then you try to build like, good products and brilliance and forward thinking and all this stuff, right? And good decision making. At the top of that pyramid, if all those things are working, you can laugh. Like that's a sign that people feel safe, right? And things are working, that you're comfortable enough. Being a little playful is a sign it's going right. When we talk about the league and how it's going to change after the pandemic, all this stuff, I actually think like laughter is a goal. I think that we want LeBron to feel like he can laugh in talking about Adam Silver, right? And in a warm-hearted way, as Steve Simon would say, laughing with, not at, right? But like we want to make a place where everyone feels safe enough that we can pass this little basic test of, can you smile? Can you feel playful?
I love that.
That's all I got. 6 seconds.
Yeah, really good. Well, you and I talk about that when you first called me to talk about relaunching True Hoop.
Oh, Judy, we're off the clock.
Anymore, Judy.
We did it. We finished our
clock.
Thank you. We can just time David if you want. It's fine.
Yeah. I'll be brief. But we talked about exactly
Randy
what you
says
just
do
said.
it. Sorry.
Exactly what you just said, Henry. We talked about we want a place where when we start adding people, like they need to be able to talk to us and laugh with us and do their best work. I mean, we had Jade on the other day. And, whenever we have any ESPN people on, Chad Thorpe was talking about this. Like,
yes,
for the most part, we all really like each other a lot. And people like me, who I really wasn't in the media the way you guys were. And so I knew these guys in a very different way. And you know this well, I kind of made it my mission to make sure when there were ego issues, so I'm going to cut that right off. Like, we're all on the same team here. And people bought in. And if everyone did that, we'd be a lot better off. And I'll finish with this. Last night, I did a Zoom call with 5 high school classmates of mine. We all grew up from 3rd or 4th grade together at 2 different schools, and then went to middle school and high school together, and 3 of us went to college together. And one of the group is very different than me politically. He texts me privately and says, I won't debate you on Facebook because you're a better writer than me. And so, but I don't agree with anything you're saying, but he's very respectful. I know his family. Our kids played ball together. His children are lovely, lovely people. He's got a son at the Naval Academy now. He's not a terrible person because he and I disagree about politics, and we're able to have decorum, right? We're able to work through things. And last night we made sure we laughed. We were respectful to each other. There's no reason to get it worse, because he's not saying the craziest things like some people are. If we all did that and found ways to laugh more, it certainly makes dealing with the pandemic much, much easier to do.
I took some notes when you guys were doing the 9x90 when you were talking, and there were a couple things I kind of want to circle back to. You guys are cool with that?
Yeah.
We have a bunch of others are prepared too. But right out of the gate, Jarod, you were talking about Jordan as anti-hero, and it struck me that there's like this. I took a class in high school. It was one of the best classes I've ever taken, and it was about like comparing the qualities of the hero in like myths from all over the globe and Shakespeare. And the geniuses who taught this class, it was like a double-length class. We read all these plays and the Ramayana and the Oresteia and all this kind of crazy stuff. It was actually all over the globe. The qualities of a hero are pretty similar if you like make a bulleted list. One that always strikes me is like heroes have to be able to separate friend from foe. I think this is the one where I feel like we fall down all the time. It's like, who do you have to trust the right people, and you have to not trust the wrong people, and you have to figure that out. Very often I feel like we're like, no, just slay everybody. It's like, no. You need a bunch of friends. Like you do. This particular quality of the Jordan thing, right, is like, and Kobe is like, they're the like step on their necks. Like they're just like the single destroyer, right? Which is a quality of a hero. But I think there's something happening that I don't really understand, which is Tom Haberstroh told me once about this thing called status panic, which is like a known kind of psychological trend where you're not right where you want to be and it freaks you out. I think there's something that you notice it in like comments or social media, like there's a bunch of people who really, really want this super macho destroyer type to be the answer. They want that to be the most important thing. They want that to win. And to the extent, I think maybe you see it a little bit in these like, the Proud Boys and this kind of like weird things happening with young men today that often get racist. I think there's like a little bit of like, oh no, like the qualities of like a soldier, the qualities that would win a violent war are the winning qualities. Where it's like a little, I mean, even just in basketball, it's like, no, passing the ball is actually really great. You know, like shooting alone in the gym is really great. Being a good teammate, you know, putting your arm around people and saying, hey, good job, like is actually tremendously valuable. But there's like this panic where people just want the answer to be the Jordan model.
Yeah. I mean, think about it, right? If you look at just straight basketball terms, look at the Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant personality archetype. Someone who is supremely gifted at their skill should be a certain type of behavior way, right? You look at someone like Kevin Durant, who you could argue is on the same skill level as those two guys, right? But his behavior is very different than theirs. And we cannot compute that. Why are you so good at basketball, but you don't act that way and you act this way? Why do you care about what these other little things or people are doing and those little social media stuff and distracting you? Jordan or Kobe wouldn't care about that. I'd actually surmise Jordan and Kobe would care about that. They just channel it in a very different way, right? The idea of I'm going to bend the universe to my will versus Durant, who's more like, I don't know if that works for me, right? I think that's something that we struggle with. It's like, here's the fit. This is what we see. Well, now you're not, I can't compute because you're not what you are supposed to be. And that generally causes, right, negative, harsh reactions. I think it's an Einstein quote where he says, brilliant minds often encounter violent opposition from mediocre ones, right? Like that, the things of that nature, right? Like when you can't expand and see, creates this visceral reaction in you. And it's like, you come out and attack. At least that's my.
It's Skip Bayless in a nutshell. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like LeBron passes the ball to Daniel Marshall and Skip loses his mind. Like he needs the right answer to be, it's me. When the answer is, here you go, Danielle. We're gonna win a bunch of championships together, me and you, right? Like, but to Skip, that shouldn't be what works. It's bothersome, right?
We've talked about, I mentioned the Bashar Assad in Syria, right? How a lot of Syrians thought, hey, you got to have some of those meltdowns and just basically kill an entire village in order to have peace, which is obviously ludicrous. Henry, you and I have sons. I am proud to say that my son does not have that gene to step on your neck and kill you. Never has.
My daughter does.
Yeah, I couldn't be prouder. When we didn't have video. I didn't let them play video games when they were little, and he would go to a friend's house, and they would slaughter him. And then we got Rock Band because we could do that as a family. And it was like 7 or 8, and we would have a kid come over, friends sleep over, and Max would always teach them. And if they beat him, fine. And then I think I let him get one like racing game, and he'd have a friend come over that didn't have the game. And Max thought it was just much more fun to teach that person how to play, so the game was competitive instead of just demolishing him. And I told my wife then, like, I just prefer that. That to me, he's not going to be good in sports for sure. It's just reality in some cases anyway. But he'll be a better teammate. Your team will win more games. He'll have a better life. I'll take that person any day. And I told my son, like, you're doing great, Max. I don't care if you ever win those games. Everyone wants to play with you because you make it fun. I'll take that.
Like, amazing thing I learned from my son was skate culture. Skate culture rocks on this point. Like, all of the best people wipe out all the time, and then they pull down their pants and show you the big bloody thing on their hip. They're like, oh my God, I wrecked so bad. And like, you just wreck and wreck and wreck and wreck. Like, and that's the best of it. Like, you go out there with the $100,000 on the line and you just have a terrible, terrible wreck. And yay, like, we're all going out to dinner. Like, it's so great. Like,
from that. You'll get better art from that for sure.
And they innovate new stuff all the time, right? Just keep trying cool new stuff. Some guys like, or it happens, obviously in the winter sports too. But I remember, now I maybe could conjure a name, but like, one of the contestants in the last Winter Olympics, or maybe it was the X Games, like, she was trying a thing at the very edge of her abilities, and she basically tried all season to do the quad, whatever, and just wrecked, and then she finally sticks it. And like, think about that. In the NBA, we'd be like, this jackass has been ruining game after game after game with this craziness. But no, in this culture, they're just like, she did it. Like, she nailed it. Like,
I've seen
so
that.
awesome.
I saw that movie In Search of Greatness I told you about on Amazon.
Yeah.
And there's that story. I think the very first like famous skateboarder has that same story before he was able to do a trick. He could never nail it. And nobody would leave.
Yeah.
They were just going to wait till he finally pulled it off, which in the movie he did. It was great.
It's cool.
Well, I think it's, we are so much an individual society, and hopefully as a result of what's been going on now, though, again, as I've said before, I'm not holding my breath. We realize that we're so much better together than we are separate. I know it sounds Pollyannish, but it's very true, right? Like, we work together, things are so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the question now, right? It's like, what can we do together? Right. I don't know much about Adam Smith, but like, he was wrong. Right.
Right.
It's just, you.
Oh, wait. Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith?
So basically like as I remember it from my U.S. history in 1987, probably was, which is actually U.S. history itself. But as I remember it, it's basically like, oh, well, everybody works in their self-interest and that feeds the giant interest of society. And like, okay, in solving some problems, that's true, right? The economy can kind of work that way, right? But a lot of the problems we have now, global climate change, pandemics, like we must work, like you wear a mask to not get the other person sick. Like Adam Smith is of no value whatsoever here. Like
that, by the way, that nuanced point, which isn't so nuanced, is lost on 40% of America right now. My wife yesterday went to the grocery store to shop for my parents and her mom, which is something she does twice a week now. And two older men, one in a wheelchair, laughed at her when they saw her mask. They were not wearing a mask. And she, of course, is thinking, dude, I'm doing this for you.
Right. Yeah. I'm helping you out.
I'm a healthy 50-year-old, whatever. You are because one of them literally is in a motorized wheelchair. And they laughed at her, basically mocking her. They're lucky I wasn't there. Not that I would have fought them, obviously, but it's that
you might have licked them.
I might have taken something out of the car and say, try to get it back. It's the height of rudeness to mock someone who's actually being thoughtful for you. They're just ignorant. They don't want to think about that. And we're faced with that all the time.
And so I think I don't know that like everybody has to like understand how everything works, right? Like we can play our parts. Like I'm an idiot on a million topics, but I do think that like the notion that self-interest is going to solve, for instance, climate change, like it's absolutely not. Like it won't happen that way. We're going to have more like non-Adam Smith sort of collective thinking, right? Which it isn't anything other than just pragmatic. This is how you solve this problem, right? You got to forget where it is on the political spectrum. Like it doesn't matter. It's just how this problem gets solved.
My coaching, I was told to come up with a coaching, mantra early in my career. And I wasn't a really smart young guy and I didn't know what to do. And I just kept thinking the same thing. Well, it's not about me. Yeah. I'm not even sure I knew that was something I could use. I just knew when I was coaching, if I made it about me, we were lost. Every kid is motivated differently. They all learn differently. Every one of them has an incredibly unique story. They all were from the projects, but some kids were rich in the projects because they had a hardwood floor home, whereas I had kids living in dirt floors. One of our best players lived under one of the busiest interstate in my county. He lived directly under it, right? I was telling Henry yesterday that I never met a mom. Almost all of my kids, none of their moms came to our games because they all worked at night. Many of them at a laundromat. And yet they still had incredibly different stories. So not about me is actually what became what I still say to this day. I don't coach because of what I do it. I've got to do it for them because everyone is different. We all took that approach as mentors, teachers. We'd have a lot better students, right?
That's actually, this dovetails into the machismo point where like, a lot of coaches would challenge you on your machismo and say like, like the famous book, The Great Santini, right?
Yeah. I'm reading Pat Conroy right now. Again, My Losing Season.
That is one of the best books of all time.
I just can't not cry. Yeah.
It's so terribly sad.
Incredible. And my dad went to Citadel right before him.
Right. So David would always say basically like, yeah, okay, that works for some players. Right. What about all the other players? And the NBA is full of these stories of like, actually, can I read this Dennis Rodman thing? I love this. Tim Kuhn, who's an unbelievable journalist, spent part of 1995 living with Dennis Rodman while completing the book that remember Bad as I Want to Be? That book came out.
On a motorcycle?
What's that?
Cover the motorcycle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Judy's got up there.
Yeah.
Clutch, Judy. That's clutch. So Tim, I'm just gonna read like a couple of paragraphs. The first time Rodman suited up for the Bulls, an exhibition game. I'm sorry, this is not from the book. This is from Tim. They just published this morning on ESPN.com. Tim reflecting on his time with Rodman. The first time Rodman suited up for the Bulls, an exhibition game in late October of 1995 in Peoria, Illinois, he went on a tirade against a replacement referee that ended when he threw the ball against the shot clock and was assessed a technical. Based on years of experience playing for various martinets who failed to appreciate the innate beauty of the well-timed tantrum, Rodman's first inclination after such a transgression was to look at the bench to see how his coach reacted to what he'd just seen. Was he defending him? Was he frantically pulling off a reserve's warm-up top, flinging him toward the scorer's table? Was he covering his mouth with his hand and talking to the nearest assistant about what fresh hell this is? The second Rodman joined the Bulls, Phil Jackson understood his fate. And even though he was probably shocked to confront it so soon, he reacted to this outburst in the best possible way. He leaned back in his chair and laughed. You remember the look, fingers steepled across his right knee, head tilted back, foot raised slightly off the floor. It was the Jackson special, laid back, trusting, his benevolent aura beaming its way into Rodman's fragile psyche. I found out from the start he's going to let me go, Rodman told me for the book. He's not as worried about distractions, because look who he's been coaching all these years. The Bulls know about distractions, and they know how to play through them.
Wow.
Good stuff.
Cool, huh?
Incredible.
It seemed like Phil really got that. I mean, I remember reading Sacred Hoops, but we know to the victors go the spoils. They can write their own history, but they're all saying it. Steve Kerr came on the record yesterday to say no one had a problem with Pippen electing to have surgery after the summer, and that starts with the boss. That starts with Phil Jackson saying, "Hey, I'm not going to start micromanaging those guys that way." Right? There's lots to be learned from that.
The Rodman thing in particular is so interesting to me, Henry, because I watched his documentary, the 30 for 30, that came out about him. And, I'm sure you guys know his history. I mean, it's just, Scottie's history too. It's just like terrible things, right? And so, yeah, these are huge, like muscular, strong, like powerful dudes on the floor. But in many ways, they are fragile, scared little boys on the inside, right? And they need to be told it's okay to be that, right? In a context where that's not what we want, right? And the coaches that can do that, which is why Dennis was so affected when Chuck left the Pistons and that whole thing broke up. That is really what sort of, torpedoed him into the caricature that we see now, right? Like he had that kind of stable family setting, and then it just went all haywire. It's more than, as you say, Coach, it's more than the game. Like, you've got to know they're humans. And I'm always an advocate of this. And when I write and when I do things, we have to see the humanity in these guys. Yes, they perform this thing and they entertain us. Wonderful. But they're humans.
I think the simple fact is, like, my losing season Citadel coach would not have gotten good play out of Dennis Rodman. Like,
he didn't get good play out of his own team.
Right.
They sound like they would have been amazing had he actually rooted for them.
Right.
He thought every time they did well, that's the guy he trashed. Pat Conner figured that out. If you play well, you're the butt of the joke the next day in practice because of that competitive spirit. He thought the head coach felt like, I used to be a player, so every time they have to do well, I have to show that I'm the boss. That's why the title is My Losing Season, and not the best 4 years of my life, which what college is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Do you have something else you said you wanted to circle back to?
Do you want to?
90 seconds?
Oh, I do. And maybe this. Well, actually, this is honestly this other thing's so much more interesting. Can I read my other little Phil Jackson story? You into that?
Yeah.
For sake, look, I this because everybody's talking about back in this time. I haven't opened this book in decades, but check this out. I love this little section. In 1990, Scottie Pippen's father died while we were in the middle of a tough playoff series against the Philadelphia 76ers. Pippen skipped game 4 to attend the funeral and was still in a solemn mood before the start of the next game. I thought it was important for the team to acknowledge what was going on with Scottie and give him support. I asked the players to form a circle around him in the locker room and recite the Lord's Prayer as we often do on Sundays. We may not be Scottie's family, I said, but we're as close to him as anyone in his life. This is a critical time for him. We should tell him how much we love him and show compassion for his loss. Demonstrations of heartfelt affection are rare in the NBA, and Scottie was visibly moved. That night, buoyed by his teammates, he went on a 29-point romp as we finished off the 76ers to take the series. In the next series against the Pistons, the stress finally took its toll on Scottie, and just before the 7th game, he came down with a migraine headache that gave him double vision. Some members of the press speculated that Scottie, who didn't have a history of migraines, must be faking it and blamed him for the team's heartbreaking defeat. I was as disappointed by the loss as anyone, but I defended Scottie because I knew that his suffering was real. The players were deeply affected by my compassion for Scottie and rallied behind him. That spirit was the seed from which a championship team would grow.
That is, I mean, incredible. And I think it goes to show that story. First of all, Bill being just amazing. Again, recognizing the humanity in his player at that moment. But also to something that you said before, Coach, about to the victor goes to spoil and who gets to write the narrative, right? That's not how the story's told, right? It was that Scottie wasn't tough enough and the Bulls weren't tough enough. That's why they couldn't get past the Pistons, right? And when you watch the Pistons Bad Boy documentary, that's what Mahorn and John Sallin was got. Yeah, those guys weren't tough. That's why we were able to. Scottie's faking migraines. No, he had a real trauma in his life. And again, if you know the way in which he grew up, literally dirt poor, right? Abject with 12 brothers and sisters. Everybody's like, he sprouted up 7 inches in college. You know why? Because he got food finally. And like, right? Like that's what happened to him. It's incredible. So when you see those things and how close he was to his family, for that to happen, of course it's going to take its toll eventually. But that doesn't fit. That's not a good enough story for what we like, which is macho, big win, and, you know, weak, whatever, lose. Like that's, you know, binary. That's what people like.
Well, think about how many millions of hours of talk there's been about Michael Jordan's sadness at his father's passing.
And nothing about that.
Because he's a certified warrior. So the Skip Baylesses of the world can just, whatever he does, it's okay to love it up, right? Like Michael Jordan could get a pass from Skip on his interior decoration, anything, right? Like every topic Michael's certified on. But this one, this delicacy one, this one about being fragile, right? Which of course we're all fragile, right? Like, but Scottie doesn't get to mourn his dad, right? Like not in this sort of macho sports worldview, but of course you want to make that safe, make him feel comfortable, make him feel supported in that. And I do trash the NBA all the time for being too macho, but this shout out, this was very rare in 1990, right? That Phil would act this way. But we had Alvin Gentry on the show yesterday. Like, you know, of course, Alvin and a dozen other NBA coaches would, of course, handle it this way now, right? It come a long way.
Yeah.
I think as someone who's literally dealing with players when they lose a family member, the last time it happened, the player called me bawling uncontrollably when his dad had gone basically into a coma and just didn't know what to do. Now, I know if he was of his right mind, he'd know exactly what to do. You call your GM. What do I do? My dad's in a coma. He's probably going to die. He couldn't think straight. And I could barely understand him. He was crying so hard. And I never thought about the Jordan dad thing until that moment when I realized the impact that has on a pro athlete, because they are just people like anybody else. And I do think the NBA has evolved hugely. So, Henry, you just said maybe 12 coaches. I know you were just talking flippantly, or a dozen coaches. It might be 25 now. Yeah. I don't think it's 30. And I think we probably could get some of the guys that wouldn't do it. I do think that we're getting better, that we're actually going to get a better product. At the end of the day, it's a business when we build that kind of culture with our players. And these coaches that are doing that, they get it. That's why the same guys win. As much as we trash Pop for pretending to be kind of the military guy, whatever, with the media, we know what he's doing behind the scenes with players, right? We talked the other day about Tony Parker, Henry, and the Celtics and Joe Forte, whatever. Tony Parker was always being yelled at by Pop, but there was also a concerted effort to love him up too. And at the end of the day, a super skinny Frenchman who couldn't shoot is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? In 3 more years, right? Or 4 more years. They knew what they were doing. They made him. And a lot of teams, he'd have been back to France in 18 months.
Yeah, Pop's on both sides of this, right? Pop's also the dude who totally bailed on Rodman so he could go to the Bulls, right? And in the press conference said something like, "Oh, everybody knew this was good. This is no surprise, right? Like, of course we're ditching this guy, right?" Like, yeah, Pop's on all sides of that one.
Yeah. But Henry, it's something that you said before about stories, and just to bring the media perspective into this, aren't these stories about Scottie so much better than the stuff that editors are forced to make writers do, because this is whatever, some person sitting somewhere is like, no, this is what gets clicks, or I don't even know what they think gets what anymore, right? Like this emotion, this connection to, they're like us. Like, those are the ones that like people want to read.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Did you
they
guys
make a
see the
movie out of it.
Marvel? Have you seen the Avengers movies, guys?
I
I've
have
seen a
not.
lot of them.
So you've seen them all, Henry?
I've seen a lot of them. I've seen them all.
Okay. So Marvel, I think clearly made a decision to portray these heroes as vulnerable and flawed. Like they were not larger than life, except for the one Vision, who was a made up. He wasn't even a person. He was made up by a machine, and he wasn't flawed because he was not a human. And I love that about it. Like I didn't love every movie a lot, but even Thor in the very last one, he gets really fat. He's affected by failing, and they're the biggest all-time success stories ever. It wasn't just we win all the time. There's no. I agree with what you're saying, Jarod. Henry and I say this all the time. It's a much better version to have that vulnerable side. And these players are as us in every way, except that it's way better. They're way better at what they do than most people are at anything they do. That's just that one little part of their life. Other than that, they're as typical as the next guy.
Well said.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with David.
There's what's Scottie Pippen like as a person? Like I did a feature story on him years ago when he was playing in Portland, and all I can remember about it, he talked about like, his defensive philosophies or all this stuff that I guess is what you're supposed to put in the stories. All I remember is he pulled up his sleeves and he showed me his forearms, and they're riddled with all these scars from when he worked at the Verlo desk factory in, I forget what town in Arkansas. And he was like pulling, remember those desks that you sit in school with like the fake wood laminate top and then the metal underpart?
Yeah.
Those are Verlo desks, and from this company, this factory that he worked in when he was like 15, 16, 17. And every time he pulled a hot part out of the thing that heats the metal and bends it, you would get another scar on your forearm. And of course it tells the whole, it's like I can't even possibly make the voice as deep as it is, but just like, here's this guy, just like, you're looking at his form, like that hurt like hell, and you just kept doing it. Like I always felt like, oh my God, I can feel what his soul feels like this has been hard, right? And the fact that he's that guy, but was a reputation of migraine faker, like it just seems so stupid. It just seemed
the documentary kind of touched on it a little bit. I don't think people really understand. Like when I say he grew up poor, I mean like poor, poor, right? And the whole thing about the contract, you have to understand, right? And I think Jamel Hill tweeted something about this. He needed to figure out, how can I keep getting as much money for as long as possible? He couldn't foresee in 6 years we're going to have more TV money and I'm going to be one. Where I come from, I need to guarantee money keep coming in for as long as possible. And if you've never understood what that is, you cannot comprehend what that's like, right? Like, and it's incredible that, again, this is the reality of understanding people and their situations and recognizing their humanity.
Okay, the chat's blowing up, you guys. It's blowing up in there. Serious question: when will the NBA have its first female head coach?
Soon.
I think it's going to be a while. Unfortunately, many of us anyway. I've been saying this for a long time. I actually brought a woman to coach my son's team last year as a junior, who was a McDonald's All-American and a great player at Virginia, because I just thought I want to have a woman's voice in addition to all the guys that he's always had. And it was great. I was very happy we did that. It's up to the owners, and I'm not – probably the better question is, when are we going to have an owner open to it? And but all we can do is we got to keep populating the coaching bench with women as assistants and let that bubble up. And there's not going to be 15 probably ever, but you're going to have one, and maybe you'll get two. And we just got to keep doing it. However you get them, whether they come from college coaches or WNBA going right to an NBA bench. I know this, and I think Henry would agree with me. Well, you probably both will, because you both talk to players. I don't think you'll get pushback from the players. I've said this for 2 decades. they're so used to their mom being the one who runs their house and who made their life. Like getting yelled at from a woman, that's only happened 8,000 times in their life about anything. Who do they call first? They call their mom. So and they love their sisters very often. They won't have a problem with it. The rest of the country, sadly, might, and not the rest, but a portion. We've got to keep bubbling up. And then we also need to get agents who run the industry, because what they do, and Henry knows this very well, is they'll represent a good number of candidates. And they'll push one. First of all, the guy that they represent who already is in the job, if they know he's suspect, they'll say, okay, if you want to fire him, let's fire him because I have this guy. And if they don't get the warm and fuzzy, let's bring the next guy in. So we need to get them to represent women too. And some of them do. So they can start pushing all those candidates. That's the behind the scenes stuff that has to happen, I think.
You know what just occurred to me? Judy's answer is really good, by the way. She said, serious answer is not soon enough. My thought is as soon as Mark Cuban really wants to run for president. Because he has a terrible, terrible woman problem, right? Like that Mavericks scandal was terrible.
Yeah.
But he needs different headlines, right? Like as soon as Mark Cuban really wants to get into politics, sorry, Rick Carlisle. Like,
time for you to retire up to the front office.
Yeah, that's my answer. But no, I do think it'll be, when an owner needs the political cover, it's a totally terrible, shoddy reality. But I think that's really the answer is whichever owner most needs to buffer their image in this way. That's when it's really going to happen.
Yeah, you guys are swaying me. I was thinking soon, only because I would get down on the floor and see, obviously, Becky Hammon's one everybody knows, but I mean, Lindsey Harding and all these other like player development coaches that come into the league, and I just watch them work out with the guys, and I not so much like the skill, but how they talk back and forth. And coach, this, it's just two ballers talking back and forth, and I'm like, of course this will work. It's fine. They talk like how anybody who plays basketball would talk to each other. No issue here. But
ballers are ballers.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I mean, well, actually, the one worrying point though is to your point, David, about like players will be fine with it. I agree with you, except for how they treat Violet Palmer, and like the female referee thing is.
I didn't know.
Some nights I'm a little freaked out about it.
What's there's another woman that Draymond like gets on like a lot. Yeah, and she'll be like, Draymond, I'm gonna toss you. Keep it up. Like, and he just, but Draymond also, he's just.
Right. And there've been some post-game comments basically where it's sort of like, oh yeah, you still the crap we got to deal with her. Like, like as if she, like, there's definitely like a does she belong here vibe sometimes, which I don't like. I understand. Everybody's very high, like, hormonal state on the court.
Game, yeah.
And you're, and it's not like everybody gets mad at the referees.
Right.
But like sometimes it seems a little gender shoddy.
That's just immaturity. I know I was that way when I first started coaching, in my 20s, and we have a female ref, maybe like a summer league game or something, because initially we weren't refing in our league. And I would just think, God, what do we have her for? I was 22, and I get home to my lovely girlfriend, and we would talk about it, and I would realize, what am I talking about? And then and then I grew up, and first I stopped yelling at referees, period. That's a whole nother thing. Like, it's not going to solve anything. Treat them with decency, you'll get more calls.
Devin's got it. This was the one that was bothering me. Chris Paul and Lauren Holtkamp. He said she may not be qualified to be an NBA ref. He's the head of the Players Association.
Yeah, he's saying that.
I don't know if she's a good ref, but I know that like the way he talked about it made me uncomfortable. For sure.
Right.
What else? Did we get everybody's questions?
Yes.
I think we did a pretty good job.
What do we have going on? I used to ask this question. Excited to hear Henry's answer. A little different now. What do y'all got going on this weekend?
At our house, like a thing that we literally anticipate like 48 hours out is like on Fridays we get takeout. It's like the big excitement. Like, ooh, we're gonna get burritos tonight, and we're like, we all talk about it. Like, what kind are you gonna get? Like, that's pretty lame.
I like it. How about you, Jarod?
Some takeout, like Henry. When you're a content creator, you're still creating content. I'm actually going to be talking to someone. I think you guys know. Andy Schwartz, the NCAA. Like he's on a lawyer. He's on the Edoban and Victoria Jackson, who's an NCAA historian professor. So I'm working, doing a podcast with them next week. So I'm going to be working on like my prep for them. But honestly, I just finished a big article on the NFL draft. I'm kind of like, gonna chill out for a couple days and, spend some time with my girlfriend and be like, oh, hey, it's not just all me creating content, right? I always think about you, Coach, and it's like you're so good about, and you too, Henry, like it's about the family, it's about everybody else. I can get so tunnel vision on, I gotta create, and it's like, wait a minute, like there's this other beautiful person I love here that I need to be paying attention to.
You need both things. You do. I think that's the deal. Weekends matter, man. Weekends are important. I hate every now and again I have to work on. Judy, tell you like every now and again there's some work to be done on the weekend, but I try really hard to just like I feel like I'm so much better on Monday if I didn't work on Saturday and Sunday. It's just how it goes.
That's the point of the weekend.
Yeah. What about you, David? What's your plan?
So once a week, my wife and I during the pandemic, we've done our own wine and cheese party, although it tends to be booze and cheese. Or lots of wine, beer, and booze and cheese. So
wine and beer and booze and cheese is a great name.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start. I've got her drinking scotch now, so I think I'm going to make her an old fashioned. We're going to have. She bought some really nice cheese and crackers yesterday, and we're going to do booze and cheese, bourbon and cheese tonight, and then I think tomorrow morning, my son and I, our local driving range and the golf courses are all open here. We have some weather, so that might be an issue. But he's the worst golfer of all time because he plays ball. All he does is play basketball. So I want to take a weekend off his ankle. We're going to go to the driving range. I'm going to hit him. He already played once. I'm going to teach him how to hit. It's like a 7-iron or whatever. And then, weather permitting, on Sunday, we're going to go. We could walk to the course, and we'll walk the course. And they have all sorts of rules in place. And I walk by this golf course every day, and no one's near each other. And we might play a first round of golf together. I'm hoping that we do. We've never done it. And then we'll come back, probably barbecue with the family at night. But yeah, it'll be fun.
I love it. Wait, what kind of single malt scotch you drinking? Might I recommend a little Balvenie 14 Caribbean cask? Delicious.
You can recommend it. Text it to me. I've got I'm finishing a Chivas 18 year.
Ooh, beauty. Yeah.
Yeah. I like scotch a lot.
This is like a basketball / like soul searching / booze show that we run here.
It's a pandemic. My favorite 3 words this time. It's a pandemic. Like, anything goes. I did a little show with, I told you, a little call with my high school friends, and we all had to cover each other when everyone had to go up to get their next glass of wine. I brought my bottle of scotch to the desk. I didn't have to get up. My wife had to bring me the glass, that's all.
The best, like the back, if we had another name for it, it's called bringing, but the next name would be booze and beer and wine and cheese, right? Like that's
booze, beer, wine, and cheese, yeah. It's all good, man. It's all good. She's not complaining.
All right, you guys. Thank you, everybody. See you on Monday. That was another episode of Bring It In. There you go. Lots of fun. Thanks, Jarod. Thank you, David.